Barber says that when he retrieved a so-called 8-gon-shaped UAP, he had an intense emotional reaction, which convinced him he'd connected telepathically with a non-human intelligence.
You're talking UFOs, flying saucers, and...
That's probably one of the hardest conversations. That object, or whatever was controlling that object, was also connecting to me through the mind, through my mind.
And so, how did the object come to land?
I think it was invited to land by the psionics team.
Jake says his mission that night came from no accidental crash. The UAP was summoned by a separate team, a special team with special abilities. They're called psionics.
What is a psionic?
A psionic person is someone with the predisposition for extratemporal, you could say, abilities and sensitivities.
Extratemporal abilities, also known as psychic powers.
What did you discover the psionics were being used for in the program?
In the program, there was certainly a desire to explore the idea that perhaps UAP could be summoned, could be communicated with, could be controlled, and could be persuaded to land, all by deploying people with psionic abilities.
And did you see that happen?
Yes, I did.
When a psionic operator engages with technology, how do they do it?
Using their mind, something like meditation.
There genuinely are people who can actually make a mental, spiritual connection to a technology.
Yes. 100%.
It all seems so far-fetched, psychically gifted humans linking with possibly alien ships, summoning them and even piloting them. But it isn't just Jake saying this. Don Paul, another decorated Special Forces operator and colleague of Jake's, says he's also seen what psionics can do.
I've had the pleasure of meeting multiple psionic assets. I've seen them function. I know that they're capable of doing what they're doing.
You can definitively say that you believe there is a capacity in the human mind to somehow psychically, telepathically connect with.
Yes, and I don't know if it's a byproduct, if it's something that they were born with, but there is certain people who are quantifiably, verifiably capable of this.
It's an established fact that the Pentagon has had an interest in psychic abilities, what it calls remote viewing, for military purposes. The famed Project Stargate spent years studying the subject, and despite the CIA's official position that such studies yielded nothing, former Pentagon UAP investigator Lou Elizondo told me last year that psychic abilities are very real, and perhaps not very rare.
So this is an ontological shock, I think, for many people watching this, because we're all being told, firstly, there's no such thing as aliens visiting this planet, and secondly, there's no such thing as telepathy or psychic abilities. It's rubbish.
Yeah, you know, I don't think there is going to be an ontological shock. I think it's going to be an ontological relief, because I think everyone deep down knows that there's more to life than what we are being told and experiencing. Like, not only is it not shocking, but it should be welcome.
It all seems so innocent, so benign, even sacred. But hold on. Jake says that through his work, he and his team have suffered serious injuries.
After this particular mission, me and everyone on my team got extremely sick.
How sick?
Like physically ill in the hospital.
And one of the world's leading medical experts agrees.
My personal experience, both with people and the things that I've seen, is that there's something here.
Are UAPs bad for your health? Coming up next.
What do you think the NHI want?
The NHI, I feel the NHI are guiding us.
Jake Barber describes his encounters with UAP as transcendent, quasi-religious moments.
And from what you're saying, that's a beautiful experience.
Yeah, it was the most beautiful experience I've had in my life.
But he also says these encounters could come with a staggering cost. UAPs may have changed his life for the better. They may also have shortened it.
So what happened to you?
We're not quite sure. We were transporting a large sealed container.
Jake says nobody on his team was told what was in that container.
And we transported what we called mystery boxes all the time. I have no idea. It could have been empty. It probably wasn't empty, but we don't know what was inside the boxes.
And what were you told if somebody tried to seize that box? What were your orders?
We maintained the authority to use lethal force if anyone tried to seize those boxes.
So whatever that box was, it was extremely valuable
That's
to the
correct.
US government.
That's correct. And after this particular mission, me and everyone on my team got extremely sick, like physically ill in the hospital. Within weeks after this, I'd lost every hair on my body, and I also lost the skin on my arms.
So the skin's actually falling off your body?
Yeah, like not just falling off, like it was lopping off within a couple of days, like a severe sunburn. I ended up developing a severe heart murmur that I'd never had before.
Last year, I introduced Jake to Stanford immunology professor Gary Nolan. He's been studying anomalous injuries among US military personnel for years at the behest of the CIA. Nolan agreed to review decades of Jake's medical records.
The report reads like a bit of a horror show, to be quite honest. To me, what the first thing that came to mind was you were exposed to some kind of radiation. And especially, as I understand it, a number of his co-workers in the deployments that he was in had similar problems. So you're not dealing with a one-off who went home and somehow came in contact with something in the house, but you have 4 or 5 individuals all at once coming down with the same thing within a week or so after deployment. That's more than a coincidence.
My fear is that there's something permanently broken that might show up in the form of cancer or God knows what later in life, and we're going to be way behind in trying to figure out how to deal with it.
Assuming Jake and his team were exposed to radiation emanating from that box, could it have come from one of the many radioactive materials used regularly by the military? Certain munitions, components of nuclear vessels, or nuclear weapons themselves? Jake doesn't think so.
If the Air Force, let's say, knew that what we were working with that night had any type of radiological signature, there's a whole set of process that we're trained in on how to deal with that from a hazmat perspective and a containment perspective. And the fact that none of that was apparent that night tells me they didn't know what was in the box, and it got turned on or turned off, which leads me to believe, in hindsight all these years, that it may have been something of non-human origin.
Speculation? Absolutely. Wild speculation? Perhaps not, when you consider other documented cases of military personnel who claim they were similarly injured by UAP. Take the famous case of Airman John Burroughs. The Veterans Administration granted him full medical disability for injuries to his heart and eyes he claims he suffered during the famous 1980 UAP incident in Rendlesham Forest, England. But that only happened after Senator John McCain intervened to get his medical records declassified.
They were classified, they just weren't withheld, they were classified. Why would you feel that the issue was so important as to not allow for that person's medical records to be released? What are you hiding?
The issue came up in last year's congressional UAP hearings.
How can the government deny we have recovered craft if they're paying people because they've been injured by recovered craft?
Ma'am, that's a great question. That's why I think we're here again, because I've seen the documentation by the U.S. government for several of these individuals who have sustained injuries as a result of a UAP incident.
What did happen sounds either unethical or an administrative oversight that needs investigation by Congress, because we shouldn't be putting people like this under such circumstances.
The good news is that now, under Dr. Nolan's care, Jake is getting proper evaluation and treatment. The bad news is Jake believes there's another, more imminent threat to his health: his former employer.
People have been murdered.
That seems to be the case.
Wasn't just the United States government interested in using Jake's expertise working with UAPs and psionics. His skills were also needed by private companies involved in the top-secret program, and his assignments soon took a turn from recovering UAPs to something more sinister.
What happened?
Well, we were deployed on a particular task to recover what we call HVTs, or high-value targets. Those high-value targets were Panasonic Toughbooks. The sensitive material that is on these Panasonic Toughbooks has to do with sensor data.
Jake and his team suspect those Panasonic Toughbooks contained data from the top-secret UAP retrieval operations, worth millions to the right buyer. Jake says the private company contracting him was determined to recover them.
We recovered our first two Toughbooks. They were in the high Sierras. We got back to our base location and then went through them and took photographs, discovered that the hard drives were missing.
Jake says his team arrived too late. The hard drives containing the data had already been taken, and it became clear to Jake that not all was what it seemed as his team set out to recover the missing data.
The next piece of intelligence that came through led us to a lake, a high-altitude lake, and we found the hard drives in a sealed steel container 25 feet underwater.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
someone's going through a lot of effort in order to hide these things.
Hidden, but by whom? What began as a straightforward recovery mission proved to be anything but simple, and Jake says things soon took a nefarious turn.
At any stage, did you find yourself under threat?
The very next time we went out, things got strange for me, and my spidey senses, my intuition, was on high alert because our intel contact changed, the rhythm and style of our intel changed. As we got closer to the day in which we were going to deploy, intelligence kept changing, and so that raised my concern. We ended up going anyway, and when we got there, the HVTs were gone, and it was clear that shots had been fired.
Shots fired? Whatever was on the computers was a secret so important it was worth fighting for. The situation had changed, and soon Jake says he realized his team was caught in the middle, and their lives were on the line.
You're in significant danger.
Yeah, and I was concerned that we were being set up, we were being prepared for the one thing that we've always offered employers, and that is plausible deniability. And that we were perhaps going to be the hidden hand that gets severed.
Don Paul, a Special Forces veteran, was working on Jake's team at the time.
Were you involved in any of the retrieval attempts?
Yes.
Was there a concern that you were being set up, potentially?
Yes. Setup is a mild term. The fact that people have lost their lives involved in this type of activity, and the lengths to which people have gone to suppress politically uncomfortable truths is such that there is risk involved.
Do you think that, without naming them, the private aerospace company that retained you decided to kill you?
Somebody masquerading as a representative of that company surely may have had that intention.
Jake was convinced his former employer, or someone posing as them, was determined to kill him. But who exactly was calling the shots? Jake was determined to find out.
Who were you working for?
It was obvious to us at least who the employer was, but they were now in question, in my mind, as being part of the problem.
Jake was on the hunt, using his skills and vast network of contacts to determine just who was behind this shadow war fought over these missing hard drives. And he says the trail led him right to the top. This past spring, Jake and his team were in Washington, D.C., conducting surveillance and eventually confronting one of their prime suspects.
So I reached out to the director of security for the particular organization and set up a meeting with them, because there was only two truths in my minds. Either they were complicit or they were compromised.
What was his reaction? Was he nervous?
Oh, he was nervous.
And so he told you to forget it.
He said, you know, it's in our best interest to move on. If he had any knowledge at all, it was clear he's trying to distance himself from it.
Jake was no closer to finding out who exactly wanted him dead, but he knew that he was no longer doing the mission he signed up for when he first enlisted, protecting Americans. To make it stop, he would need more than his hand-picked team. He would need Congress, he would need funding, he would need to go public. And he would need us at News Nation to reveal our own startling UAP footage. Barber says it's now time for the public to know. That's why he's doing this interview. But he's doing much more than talking.
And what you're trying to do now is replicate in the private sphere what's being suppressed in the public sphere.
Yeah, you know, we're not looking back. We're looking forward. I am absolutely confident that we are capable of generating the type of high quality sensor data and photography and film evidence that everyone is wanting.
So who exactly is we?
Our organization is called Skywatcher. We have been recruiting guys from within the program and women, and are forming a new team in coordination with government agencies. And we also have the funding through venture capital.
Can you name those agencies?
Not at this time, but I hope to very soon.
Jake's Skywatcher team has already deployed on behalf of the US government to investigate last year's drone sightings on the East Coast. But before that, they were on the hunt for something even more elusive. In August of 2024, Jake and the Skywatcher team conducted their own operation with a psionic asset to see if they could summon a UAP themselves.
Look, there's two. Look at this, look at this, look right here. Look at this one going down and this one going up.
This footage from another Skywatcher operation showing the team's protocols. The team hoped to quietly gather evidence for Skywatcher, but instead found themselves in danger once more, and Jake says a UAP dogfight erupted in the sky above them. He believes the craft summoned by the team was warring with a rogue UAP piloted by an unknown entity attempting to intercept Skywatcher's operation.
Tell me what happened.
So we set out to do this operation. Right away when the psionic asset went into meditation, he is reporting that he is engaged and in fact piloting a craft and is bringing it in.
So he's actually telepathically controlling alien technology.
Yes, yes. As crazy as that sounds, that's exactly what we set out to do, what he reported we would do. And then things got a little weird. Right about I'd say 4 or 5 minutes into the operation, he goes, something's going on, something's wrong, get me out of here. And right about that time, our Overwatch Fred looked up to the sky and saw a disc, a classic lenticular shaped disc.
That was Fred Baker, Special Operations veteran, now part of the Skywatcher team.
So he was flying the egg.
And then when we had to pull him out of this, that's when the egg dropped.
Wow, so at the very moment that he's essentially detaching his mind from the object, you see it fall.
Correct.
Professor Gary Nolan was there that night too.
What I did see was an individual who, in the midst of attempting to call such an object, it was clear that he was in distress at the moment of the supposed interaction. And at that moment, something is seen. When we reviewed what it was that the person on the roof had seen, both by drawing and by videography, something showed up.
Can we see the egg?
Yeah. So here's frame one. It passed across our entire 69-degree angle of view in 0.84 seconds on our sensor. It comes into frame here.
So that one there does look like just an upright oval egg.
Oval egg.
And is that similar to what you've seen in the program?
Oh yeah. This is exactly the same thing.
Aside from releasing data and footage like this to the public, we're told this video was among those sent to the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, the Pentagon organization responsible for monitoring UAPs. The egg resembles the UAP encountered by US Navy fighters off the east coast of the US in 2015, suggesting a connection between these anomalous objects. But until now, it's never been shown to the public, making Jake's mission even more critical. The Skywatcher team feels it has to push the federal government to act. Witnesses at the congressional UAP hearings have been saying the same thing.
The Pentagon, the intelligence community is treating us like children. It's time for us to know the truth about this. I think that we can handle it.
Jake Barber has been to Capitol Hill too. NewsNation has confirmed that this fall he met with staffers for Florida Senator Marco Rubio, now President-elect Trump's pick for Secretary of State.
I feel I was able to fill in gaps that have been there for a long time that no other whistleblower has been able to do.
A lot of people aren't going to believe this. What do you say to those people?
I'm not here to make anyone believe anything. It's exhausting. I'll paraphrase the book of Matthew. You will know us by our fruits. Stay tuned in and watch what our new project is about to do. And prepare to be dazzled.